All right. Well, welcome everyone to Kid Keynotes. Kid Keynotes is a lecture series for the USS Kidd, started in 2014, and we talk about all manner of things, not necessarily the USS Kidd, but any sort of Louisiana military history, anything relating to the name USS Kidd, the three destroyers named after Rear Admiral Isaac Campbell Kidd, and honestly, just about anything. My name is Tim NesSmith, and I'm the Ship Superintendent and Education Outreach Coordinator for the USS Kidd. And tonight we're going to be talking about Louisiana's memorial submarine, USS Golet, I think is the way to pronounce it, Golet. We're going to get somebody to help us with that. And that person is going to be Miss Karen Duvalle of the Wisconsin Maritime Museum, home of USS Cobia. And Karen is the, correct me if I'm wrong, the Submarine Curator?
Yep, correct.
Okay. And we were just talking a little bit before we started. How long have you been with the museum, Karen?
Just hit 23 years. So I started in 2001.
Okay, so you started when you were 5.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. So yeah, kind of like me. I've been with them 29 years here, and I think I started right about 8 or 9. So
works for me.
And my name, by the way, if you didn't catch it earlier, if you're just signing on, my name is Ken Stano, and you're what? No, I'm kidding. I got a haircut today. So.
Hi, Ryan.
Or I'm also known as Ryan Szymanski, sure, curator of Battleship New Jersey. If you're not in on that joke, you need to go to our video section and watch the gag reel for Kid Matters, and you'll get the joke. It's about 2 minutes of your time, not a long viewing. But tonight we are dealing with the submarine USS. Educate me, Karen. How do you pronounce it?
Golet.
Golet. So a French type pronunciation.
Yep.
USS Golet. If you're not familiar with how submarines from World War II on the U.S. side were named, there was a naming system in place for all U.S. ships, and they stuck pretty close to it for the most part until politics got involved in the post-war period. And so submarines were named after not necessarily fish, but creatures of the deep.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Denizens of the deep.
Denizens of the deep.
Yep.
The reason we invited Karen to join us tonight is because she, multiple reasons, but because obviously she works on a submarine. She knows all things submarine. And so she is our resident expert on submarines, along with our friends Rich McKelney, Paul Ferrace, Evan. I'm just going to call him Evan because I can't pronounce his last name. Greg Williams, and so many more around the historic fleet. But yeah, the naming system apparently got messed up when Admiral Rickover decided that fish don't vote. I think that's a direct quote from him.
Yep.
And so then we ended up with all manner of names over the past 50 or 60 years. Let's see. Let me check real quick because I'm not seeing too many people in the live chat. I want to make sure that we are going. Let's see. Yep, we are. All right, we are live. So we just have a quiet chat tonight. So let's get this thing rolling. This is my first live stream that I'm running, by the way. Usually I sit and just jibber jabber while Ken and Connor do all the legwork, or else we record it ahead of time, as I've done with Park Stevenson and with Elijah Otto on 2 previous Kid Keynotes. Josh, thank you for joining us. It's working well there for you. Thank you for giving us that independent confirmation. So why are we discussing the USS Goolay? Well, today, in addition to being Flag Day, today is the anniversary of her sinking, June 14th, 1944. And Karen, would you care to discuss a little bit behind the manner in which I think it was submarine veterans of World War II asked the citizens of the United States to how to honor the lost submarines of World War II?
Yeah, there were a total of 52 subs that didn't return home during World War II. So each submarine was assigned eight, excuse me, with California and New York getting two since they're bigger. So our state boat in Wisconsin is the USS Lardo, and that one was built here in Manitowoc. And Louisiana got USS Goolay.
And the reason we got Goolay, I'm guessing, is because she was funded.
Yeah.
Her construction was funded by a war bond drive out of Caddo Parish. The citizens of Shreveport and the surrounding area raised enough money to buy a submarine. Which,
That's interesting.
how many people can say I helped buy a submarine? Not a whole lot of people. So that's why you have a Louisiana and a Wisconsin. Well, we have a Louisiana connection. You have Lagarto as your memorial submarine, and we'll discuss her in a little while. What is the Wisconsin connection for the Goolay?
It was built here.
It was built there.
So, yep. So I'm in Manitowoc, which is between Milwaukee and Green Bay, for those who don't know, right along Lake Michigan. And Manitowoc built 28 submarines during World War II. Goolay was right in the middle of all of those. And they had a great reputation for building vessels. Started out with wooden vessels here with the Manitowoc Shipbuilding Company. And they built destroyers for World War I, and it was the Navy that asked Manitowoc Shipbuilding Company to build submarines. And being in the middle of the country, the workers and the president, Charles West, had never seen a submarine, so they brought him and a couple of his guys out to the East Coast, where he toured the Squalus, and then poured over blueprints. He went to Electric Boat. They showed him all the stuff, and he said, "You know what? We can do this, and we can do it better." So that was kind of their model for the full war, and decided to build some of the best built submarines. That's what we say. We also call them like freshwater submarines because they were built here and tested in freshwater out in Lake Michigan.
I'm going to ask a question about freshwater a little bit later on, something I hadn't considered when we were originally talking about this a few months ago. I like that we can do this and we can build them better, because that says something about, their confidence when you're talking about Electric Boat, because Electric Boat, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't they have their origins with John Holland?
Possibly
Or
that.
one of the original submarine
that
building
connection, but yeah, they're pretty big in building submarines. But Charles West was confident. They called them cheeseheads and cherry pickers, where the farmers would work the fields during the day and then weld at the shipyard at night. So good old Wisconsin work ethic. Don't sleep, just work.
Yeah. We kind of had the same situation in World War II down here with Delta Shipbuilding and Higgins and everything. So Goolay ends up being sunk during the war. She's one of the 52. She gets assigned to Louisiana. And by the way, this is where Ken and Connor are always so much better at doing this than I am. Let's see if I can pull this up. I'm going to show folks where you are from real quick, if we can. There we go. So Wisconsin Maritime Museum, located. How far is the museum in Manitowoc from where the shipyards are? Are the shipyards still there?
The shipyards are, well, yes and no. We are about a mile or so, half mile from where the ships or the subs were built. They were built on a peninsula that's formed in the Manitowoc River, where it curves and forms a peninsula. And that's where they built them. And now they're building wind turbines. So basically big, long tubes, same thing. But across the river is Burger Boat, and they were around long before World War II, and they built minesweepers, and now they moved on to more commercial vessels like Chicago tour boats and sometimes multi-million-dollar yachts. So they are still around. And Manitowoc ship, they left Manitowoc in the mid to late 60s because they were building freighters, 1,000-foot freighters. And here in the Great Lakes, we traditionally side launch our vessels, and they got too big for the river, 1,000-footers, and they actually had to cut out a section of the river a little bit to allow the Ryerson, which was the boat, to make the turn in the river and get out of Manitowoc. So they realized we're going to go a different place. So they moved about an hour north of here in Sturgeon Bay.
Okay. They do side launches here, they did side launches here in the Mississippi River in New Orleans as well. So we've got some pictures of that coming up. And for those of you that have not been to the Wisconsin Maritime Museum in Manitowoc, this is Karen's baby. This is the USS Cobia. And Cobia is the same class as the Golet, correct?
Yeah, partially, yes. Yeah.
And that's a Gato-class, right?
Yeah. So, yeah. Cobia's Gato. Technically, Golet is listed as a Boleo, but that's because it was started to be built. They were starting to build them. So the names here kind of go alphabetical with the subs. The first contract was for 10, and those are the P's and the R's. Pedo being the first, Rock being the last one. And then it went from G through M with the fish names again. And Golet was the first out of the Boleo class. So there's 3 G boats, and I call them the 3 Gs are hybrids, where they started building them, and then they got the contract for 20 more submarines. So their hull, I think the thickness of the hull is still the same as the Gato, which Gato are the thin skin boats. They can go safely to 300 feet. Where Boleo have a thicker hull, they can go to 400 feet. So the 3 Gs, Golet, Guavina, and Guitarro, all, that's what I say, hybrid, because they were started as Gatos, but then had some of that technology change for the Boleo class.
Okay. And I remember reading something about they didn't get the plans in time before they started or something like that. Is that accurate?
Yeah, so they probably started them as, Gato as they had them, and then changed them as they went. But Manitowoc was always changing and improving and listening to the captains when they came back from patrols, and what worked, what didn't, what can we improve, that kind of thing. So that was a part of the reputation too for Manitowoc, is growing and changing and learning.
I think that's true across the whole fleet, because the same thing exists for Fletcher destroyers. As they were sending reports back from Guadalcanal on the fly of, okay, move this 3 feet over in the CIC and make room for this new equipment.
Mm-hmm.
And in the shipyard, they're all of a sudden just marking up the plans and making the changes based on, concrete experience.
Mm-hmm.
So let's dive into this. No pun intended. For those of you that don't see us on Facebook, Karen and I carry on a mutual ribbing, destroyer versus submarine. So I make jokes at her boat's expense, and she threatens to sink my ship. So it's all good natured. We get along for the most part, except for when we talk about cheese. So let's see. All right. Well, we've talked about the differences between the two classes already a little bit. So let's go through here and see what we've got. The fish, we brought up a picture of the fish so that you know what it looks like. And from what I understand in my research, these fish are mostly in the Pacific Northwest, a little bit in California. So this is a Golay. If you go out fishing in the Pacific Northwest, look for one of them, and you can catch yourself the namesake or the eponym for one of our submarines. I love the artwork here.
Yep.
Do you have any info on how the artists were inspired? I see a little Japanese, I
Yeah.
guess, snail in the right hand.
Yep. Goolay was one of the, if I remember, 4 submarines that he designed. It was by one of the shipyard's artists and photographers, Harry Burns. I'm trying to remember his name. He designed a couple of them, and this was one of them. The one on the right with the fish and the snail. That was one of his designs. What do I count? I think there was 8 that were done by Disney Studios. 10 were done by local artist named Ray Young. The last 10 submarines. So there was 4 or 5 that were done by Burns. He also took all the series of photographs of all the submarines that were launched here and built here. So I did a program last year on submarine logos and insignias, and it was really interesting, actually.
Yeah, I love learning about the folks that did the artwork. Do we know what happened to him after the war? Did he continue in the field?
Yeah, I think he stayed with the shipyard for a while. They moved into like Manitowoc ice coolers and refrigerators, ice machines, which you'll see around the country. In hotels, you'll see a little Manitowoc ice. Our locals, we're nerdy. We get excited when we see them. But he did sort of the advertising and marketing designs and things like that after the war.
Okay. And for our viewers, if you have any questions for Karen or myself, but mostly for Karen because she knows more about subs than I do, go ahead and shout out in the chat, and we'll see if we can address them for you. Let's see, what do we got coming up next? So we talked about the war bond drive and the people of Shreveport donating money, buying war bonds, and purchasing a submarine. This is a picture from her launching, Golay's launching, and that was when, Karen? Was that in June?
August 1st.
August 1st of 43.
Yes. Yep,
Yeah.
43.
Okay. So this was hanging off the side when they launched her, and this is really this one here I was curious about. Was this mounted somewhere? Where did this come from?
That I'm not sure.
Not sure.
As far as I can tell, that's the only sub that was sponsored by anyone. So
really, okay.
I want to dig more into this and figure out the connection and the reason if I have time someday. But yeah, of all the other photos, I haven't seen anything else where they were sponsored, but it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and this must have been maybe sent back to Shreveport somewhere. Maybe it might be sitting up there somewhere in a town hall or something.
Could be.
Because obviously it didn't go with the sub because the sub was lost. So, or maybe it is with the sub for all we know. This may just be an old picture from the period.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got some pictures of getting ready for the launching. You can see her up on the blocks. People are getting to see a lot of ships up on blocks right now. New Jersey just left the dry dock. Kid is getting ready to go into the dry dock, and you guys are getting ready. You're fundraising right now to take Cobia back to dry dock. Yes. She was last in dry dock about 97.
96 was the last dry dock.
Okay. I still need to get you. I've got a VHS time-lapse video of her leaving Manitowoc and then getting in the dry dock. Where was the dry dock for that at?
Was that in Sturgeon Bay, so about 60 miles north of here. Okay. So the boat will get towed up there, put in dry dock, hopefully 4 to 6 weeks, and then head back home.
Same yard as 96?
Yes, correct. Okay. And that's that yard is where Manitowoc Shipbuilding eventually moved to, but now it's owned by Italian company Fincantieri. So still a local connection too. And I think everyone that was there the last time is gone by now, but they have They still have the information from last time, thankfully. So, yeah, we'll be going up there next year, September of 25.
And a lot of folks out there, I don't know if you encounter this, but I get all the time, hey, do you know Travis Davis at the Texas? Hey, do you know Ryan Szymanski? Hey, do you know Libby Jones? Et cetera, et cetera. It's a very small community, folks. So the fact that I have a video, time-lapse video of her submarine dry docking comes about because of those connections. I got it from my first ship superintendent, Tim Rizzuto, who got it from a friend of his at the Pampanito, Russell Booth, who was contracting out, I guess,
He was the
helping.
project manager. He stayed on the boat the entire time, the entire 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Can't imagine. But yep. Yeah, he did a great job.
I would rather stay on the boat in dry dock in Wisconsin than I would during the summer, during spring, summer, something like that. Than I would staying on Kidd in the dry dock in summer like we are right now, and that's not happening because if I sweat that much, I will disappear. So, but some more pictures of Goolay on the riverside, and this is the Manitowoc River.
Yes.
Okay.
And if you noticed on the front, the bow, the torpedo tubes are covered, and in the back, you see they're covered, and that was part of the top secret is
security.
Yeah, concealing how many torpedo tubes they had.
Oh, see, I didn't even catch that. That's why I have you here to point out cool stuff like that.
6 in the front and 4 in the back. So 10 torpedo tubes. 24
and I did not notice, maybe we'll see in some of these photos, does she have her deck guns yet?
No, I believe those were added when they got to New Orleans.
In New Orleans? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So bringing that up, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, like, just to get to New Orleans, they went down the Mississippi. But the one unique thing about Manitowoc subs is the shears that go around the periscopes on the very top, and the periscopes themselves were removable, and they were laid on the deck aft of the sail in the middle, because that's the longest section, so that they could get under the bridges, and then they were in a floating dry dock so that they could be raised to get through some of the shallow areas.
Okay. So planning ahead.
Yep.
Which is
the St. Lawrence, it wasn't completed yet. Went through the Mississippi.
Yeah. And how, I'm assuming they go down to Chicago?
Yep. And then Sanitary Canal to the Illinois River to the Mississippi.
Okay. All right. I always wondered the connection from Chicago to the Mississippi, where it was at. So that gives me an idea now.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. Very cool. So Goolay actually ended up coming to the state that would that purchased her, basically, and then also, where she would become the memorial submarine for it. The river does not look this wide right here. It looks wider up there by the museum when I visited in 2019.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. And this is the official party. The ship sponsor would be, I'm trying to pick her out. Do you know?
I think the one holding the flowers is typically the sponsor.
Sponsor? Okay.
That could be there. The wife of a senator.
Yeah. And I don't think there was anybody from Louisiana at this one.
No, I looked it up. I was curious too. But he was Wisconsin.
Yeah. Yep, that's her. Okay. Mm-hmm. Back in the day when you actually could smash a bottle against the ship. These days, everybody's so safety conscious that they don't do it. The third kid had a piece of steel welded off of the bow stem outward, and then they would just take their bottles and strike downward instead of at a side at eye level.
Yeah.
And
she's got some glasses on. She's all right.
She's fine. She's got eye protection.
Right.
And those long sleeves, she's got protection against flying debris. So but nowadays they do that stem thing, and then after they break the bottle, then after the crowd leaves, then a torch guy comes up and just lops it off, and they grind it smooth again. Not quite the same.
Fun. No.
Yeah, not as fun.
We have a couple of bottles from different boats over the years. There was, well, during the war era, there was a mother and a daughter team that, not sewed, but put together all of the ribbons, the coverings.
Yes, I've seen that.
Mm-hmm.
That is amazing to behold, and it keeps all the fragments from flying all over the place, usually.
Yeah.
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 We have one from the heavy cruiser New Orleans,
Okay.
and it's still intact
Mm-hmm.
and still, I don't know how it did it with the bottle breaking, but the wrapping still kind of has the shape of a bottle. It
Yeah,
hasn't
they kind of
collapsed or anything.
wove the ribbons together. But this mother-daughter duo did dozens of not just the subs, but all the other boats as well. It was, everyone contributed in some way. It was kind of a neat little side story for that.
And was that part of your artistry display, the artwork and everything? Because that's a skill that, I mean, I'm going to
Yeah.
throw a plug right now for my wife, who's going to be watching later. She is part of an embroidery guild, and all this
Yeah.
needlepoint stuff and everything. Man, that's artwork.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. We do have one on display in our permanent collection for the Manitowoc Shipyard, World War II area, actually.
Neat. So we have here the side launch for Goolay, and I'm looking. What is? I haven't been able to figure it out. Right below, right to the left of the sail, there's
Mm-hmm.
something kind of bright, kind of standing up like a stick
Yep.
or something. Is that some editing, or is that?
Nope, that is, it measures the angle of the angle and sort of the depth, because apparently I think it was on this one that Goolay in that berth was slightly shallower than the other ones.
Okay.
So I actually just learned that. But yeah, it was to measure the angle and make sure. I mean, I'm sure there was a reasoning for that, but but they did tests beforehand to convince the Navy that side launching would work for submarines, because previously they weren't. With the rounded hull, they were worried. And I think in all of them, people wrote out the launch. They were in the conning tower, which must have been a wild ride.
Wow.
Yeah,
I've seen some modern side launches on video, and even now it's a wild ride with the bigger ships and the wider beam.
Yeah.
In fact, there's one that goes around the net, and it shows the side launch, and the police have to stop the traffic on the road on shore, on the opposite shore, because the wave, which we can see on the right side of the picture here, the wave just crests over it and entirely floods the highway that's there.
Could have been the Marinette north of here, where they also part of a subdivision from Manitowoc Shipbuilding moved there as well, and they're building littoral combat ships up there right now.
That's the type that was being launched.
Yeah, so it could have been Marinette, because it's not very wide, and there's a big splash. And in Manitowoc, people learned right early on that don't sit on that side of the river. You get a little wet.
Speaking of don't sit on that side of the river, OSHA standards these days, right dead center in the bottom of this picture, you see a guy with a kind of a whitish hat, right up close to the cradle there, where all the timbers are flying. I would think don't stand so close to the boat when it comes off the timbers.
Someone's got to kick the wedge out of the way to get it to launch.
I guess I would not want that job.
No.
So she gets launched, and now she's got to do sea trials. So sea trials, just like a surface ship, you test all of the equipment, make sure everything's working. And this actually looks like is this Lake Michigan? Because this looks like a deck gun is on there now. Oh, actually, it looks like all of her.
Yeah, I'm guessing it's not Lake Michigan, because it looks, there's too much there.
Yeah.
I don't remember off the top of my head if that was Lake Michigan or during the war. Might have been just out in the Pacific somewhere.
Okay.
First patrol, because nothing
after. Yeah, and in the background you can see what looks like some towers or else some antenna that are on the sub. But
a couple of antenna there.
Couple of antenna. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And she had for her deck guns, I know 20 millimeters. What was her or the anti-aircraft up on the, what do you call the platform behind the sail?
Cigarette deck.
Cigarette deck. Okay. So she had some anti-aircraft there. What's the main gun up on the deck in front of the sail?
That is at the time frame probably the 4-inch 50.
A 4-inch 50. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And did I read somewhere she did have a 5-inch at some point, or Gatos did have 5-inch?
Eventually, yeah. Cobia had a 5-inch put on for the last 2 patrols.
Okay.
Mainly
What does she have now?
A 3.
3. Okay.
We can't find anything that's more accurate. 3 wasn't. It was put on in the early 70s. I would love to have a 4-inch 50 or a 5. But yeah, Cobia's 4-inch was blown off during a depth charging in May of 45.
Wow.
And when they got back, they got a 5-inch.
Okay. And I'm sure a wet mount looks a lot different from just an open mount on a ship.
Mm-hmm. You can kind of see that there's something that comes up and secures the barrel, and then they would put caps over them, keep the water out.
Always a necessity. Don't want your gun rotting from the inside. So more sea trials. And again, she's got anti-aircraft, so this definitely is not Lake Michigan then.
Unless they had some where they just tested it. That's a great one.
I love these photos. Being from the South, always having lived in the South, and seeing a submarine completely encased in ice like this. That is amazing. The tag for these photos from NHHC, Naval History and Heritage Command, said December of 43. So
yeah,
I mean, you can see ice flow in the water. That's too much ice for me.
Funny story with that. The lookouts would have these big long coats on, and the lookouts would get coated in ice too. So when they would get down back into the sub, they had to take an axe to chisel the ice off so they could just take the jacket off.
Wow. Oh. Yeah, you don't ever have to worry about me coming up north to work on one of those ships up there.
You should come visit us in December.
Now here's a question. I got to visit you in Cobia for Historic Naval Ships, not conference, symposium, back in 19. And from my recollection, this looks like it was taken right at the mouth of the river.
Yep.
With that pier going out to, I'm assuming it's a lighthouse in the middle right.
Is there a lighthouse? Is not. I think the pier for the lighthouse, the older one, is behind it yet.
Okay.
But that is, we've since then gone through a few different lighthouses and piers. No longer, I think that still had the catwalk on that one in that time frame. Okay. But yeah, that is coming back into Manitowoc.
So very close to where you guys rest now with Cobia.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah. We're right near the mouth of the river.
Okay. And so all of the submarines coming back from sea trials passed right by you guys.
Yep.
If y'all had been there at that time.
Yes.
Yeah, past your location.
There was a shipyard here.
That is a very neat connection. And I mean, Goolay, obviously, and all the other Manitowoc subs came right by where the kid was, so, but that's different. They're just traveling. This was coming home for them. So neat that y'all were able to acquire that location for me later. Let's see. Lunar Weasel asks, were the caps really effective at keeping the water out? I always wondered about rusty barrels on a sub.
As far as I know, they were.
Yeah.
They all had barrels and thick grease. Or caps on the barrels, I should say. Why am I? Yeah. And then ammo was kept in ammo lockers around the sail and also in the magazine, which is underneath the cruise mast.
Now, those lockers around the sail, is that on the inside or on the outside?
Outside.
On the outside. Obviously, things are locked down on Cobia for good reason. General public can get into trouble. Kids playing can smash fingers. So I didn't open up any of those panels on the sail. because I'm a good boy and I try not to do what people do to my ship. Did those panels have rubber gaskets? Because I know rubber was in tight supply during World War II. They saved it for the war effort.
They did have rubber gaskets, I
They
believe.
did have rubber
It's
gaskets.
still
Okay.
there, yeah. Yeah, there was two big ones in the front, and that held the shells for the 4-inch or 5-inch deck guns. And then in the back on the sides, there was some for the 50 cals. Actually, there's two at least where the 50 cals could go in, and then ammo for the 20 or the 40 millimeter.
And I'm assuming the 20 millimeters also had some sort of caps to keep the gun barrels from getting immersed.
Yeah.
Well, they're immersed, but getting the interiors
Yeah.
rusty. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. More ice. I'm getting cold just looking at these pictures.
Interesting thing about doing trials on Lake Michigan, though.
Yeah.
The old tale of when they would do sea trials in the ocean and you got water on the inside, they would test and see the taste. If it's salty, you got a problem. That doesn't work here. It's all going to be fresh.
Fair point. Fair point. And that actually ties back in. We're at the point now to where I can ask that question that I thought of earlier. All the other locations, Electric Boat and the other places that we're building subs, they're along the coast. They're in salt water, which is where these subs are going to operate. Did they have to do anything special for the sea trials for Goolay and the other Manitowoc boats, given that they're doing their trials in salt water? In freshwater?
Figure out the buoyancy difference of salt versus fresh. Also, they didn't have full equipment on either, so they would have been a lot heavier once they got the ammo and all their supplies and everything else. So they did factor that in a little bit, but they had fun actually doing the trials. They would track the car ferry that goes across to Michigan. They would twice a day. That would be their target practice. And we still had the blackout conditions, even though we were inland. So they navigated using the neon signs from taverns.
Really?
Good old Wisconsin tavern signs.
There you go. That's neat. How far south did they range for sea trials? Did they go out like overnight, or was it always back by dusk?
As far as I know, it was just a day trip.
Daytime. That'd have been pretty neat if they were tracking the two aircraft carriers, riverboat type aircraft carriers, the Sable and the Wolverine. Yeah.
Yeah, that's another great story.
Those aviators would have had a heart attack.
Right.
Man, that ice just kills me. It does.
How they not fall off, though.
I know, right? There's a good close-up. It's interesting looking at this stuff. I can get lost in it. And do we know the time period for this? I mean, up in the top left, it talks about the commissioning date of November 30th of 43.
Yep, that's the commission photo. So that would be November 30th.
So this is these are her plank owners.
Yep.
And probably most of the sailors that were on her first war patrol when she first went out into the Pacific.
Yeah.
Young boys. What's the average crew size for a Gato-class sub?
They all averaged around 80.
Around 80? Okay. And Vallejo was slightly more? Close? Okay.
Yeah, they pretty much interior size was the same. It was just thickness of the hull and some different changes, maneuvering area and technology things. So, but crew was pretty much the same size. It varied per boat, per patrol, and their mission, but averaged around 80.
Okay. Sorry to see you have to go, Jeff. Hopefully you can catch the rest of this on the channel. Just go to our live section or to the museum collaborations when you get back, and you will find, and to the kid keynote section, it'll be there as well. And you can catch up and finish up the live stream with us. Thanks for coming. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
Some more of the crew.
Yep.
I'm assuming What's that?
That would be commissioning.
Commissioning. Okay, so you're still in Manitowoc at this point with her.
Yep.
There's those guardrails you were talking about that can come down.
Mm-hmm.
No idea where this would be, but man, what a narrow profile. What's the beam on
Yeah.
one of these subs?
Widest is 28 feet.
Wow.
I know.
Wow.
Interesting shot.
Yeah. The guys, we just recently took kid out into the Gulf and around Tahoma for dry docking, and the crew from TNT Salvage, who was on board to make sure everything functioned properly, pumps, all the equipment and everything during the tow.
Yeah.
They were commenting we had 2 or 3 foot seas right when we entered the Gulf, and then it got relatively calm. But right off of the mouth of the river, I would assume, I don't go out in the Gulf that much, but I would assume that the 2 different sets of water hitting each other, it's a little more turbulent there. And they were kind of amazed at the degree of rolls that we were taking. We weren't taking huge rolls. I'm like, this is that big, but what they were doing was extrapolating. Okay, with this calm of a sea and her taking that much of a roll, scale upwards, and oh my God, I'd hate to be on this thing, in a storm. And I can only imagine what this would be. This is crazy.
Yeah.
28 feet?
Yep, 28 feet.
28 feet at her widest.
Yeah.
I've had a couple of friends who served on modern submarines, and they're rounded, whereas the World War II boats are kind of boat shaped. They've got that tapered hull, and they're designed to cut through it. They stay on the surface for the most part, where modern submarines stay underwater.
Yeah. The main pressure hull is rounded, and then they just the top part is just a deck. It's called the superstructure that sits on top of the main pressure hull.
So this is the superstructure we're seeing.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
So yeah. Okay. That makes sense. And the outer shell right here that we're seeing, this is not the pressure hull. This would be what do they call that?
This would be, in that area is the bow buoyancy tank. So underneath there's none of the forward torpedo tubes are visible. So there's like an iceberg. It's bigger underneath. You going down a few more feet with 3 more torpedo tubes under there. Well,
and see, it doesn't seem like that going down in Cobia.
Yep.
It really doesn't.
Yep.
Because you're only going down one deck, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. That's a long ladder, though.
You just put your feet on the side and slide down.
No. I did that once on Kid, and I'll never do it again because I almost broke my shoulder.
Yep. Yeah. Well, that's what they had to do back then, because if you didn't get inside the boat before it dove, you were in trouble. You were swimming.
I'll take a broken shoulder over death,
Yep.
Oh, let's see. Lunar's got another question. How fast was Cobia submerged?
Maximum submerged, because they were running on battery power at that time, was about 9 knots. Yeah.
9 knots? Okay.
9 knots it was submerged. But they were also, again, battery power, so they had to conserve their battery power, so about 1 to 4 knots. So, yeah, it would be about 9 knots is around 10 miles per hour.
The more you push it, the more you drain the batteries.
Yep. So they ran on engines on the surface and then batteries underwater. They had a total of 252 battery cells. They're 4 feet tall, 2.5 feet wide. They were rechargeable, so run the engines, recharge batteries, and then run on battery power underwater, typically during the day. Better camouflage. Or during a storm, they would go underwater so they wouldn't have to be bouncing around like the Kid was.
Yeah. And nowadays the subs are only on the surface when they're coming into port or leaving port. They go below, which was what I was referring to. A couple of my friends have gone down in the modern subs. They said they hate being on the surface for that little small stretch coming into and going out of port because that big round tube just rolls back and forth constantly. They were not old enough to have gone on one of these World War II subs that is more shaped for being on the surface. And they theorized, they're like, this must have been so much better than what we had. But the plus side was they were nuclear, so they go under and they can stay under. They don't have to surface and charge and everything. So interesting. All right, so let's talk a little bit. Let's go back a little bit just to here. Let's talk a little bit about, get away from the ice so I don't get cold. Let's talk a little bit about her time. She comes down the river, she gets to New Orleans, she does fitting out, and then she goes on more sea trials or shakedown cruise, I think I read.
Yeah, it's pretty much from New Orleans to the Panama Canal.
Okay.
Was kind of their shakedown. Go through the canal and then out to Pearl Harbor.
Okay.
So all of the Manitowoc subs served in the Pacific and were primarily based out of Australia or Pearl Harbor.
And that's something I was going to ask. Was Pearl the main point of sorting out on war patrols? But they actually would go to Australia too and have a base out of there too.
Yeah, Fremantle and Perth were quite well. Cobia was out of there, but they also had Brisbane and Sydney, I believe. But Cobia was also out of Australia most of the time.
Okay, so that shortens transit time somewhat. Mm-hmm. Very neat. Okay, so Goolay is operating out of Pearl, mm-hmm. and she goes on her first war patrol in early 44. I don't remember the month, but from what I understand, she didn't really run across any targets of opportunity that were worth a torpedo, is what I read.
Yeah, correct. It sounded like they were off of Japan, and there sounded like it must have been earlier in 44 because it was ice and storms, from what it sounds like. So they didn't see much out there. So I don't have my cheat sheet.
Folks, if you haven't noticed, I'm reading a cheat sheet because I'm on the ship that hunts these things, not necessarily the American ones, but I kind of have a fascination with submarines just because know thine enemy, right? Mm-hmm. So, but no, not for the American sub. So we actually have a little mini sub up the street from the kid from the Civil War era. We did our last kid keynotes on that. Eric H is asking, what's the max depth they were rated for?
Gato-class.
Can we even say that these days? Because I know the published depth is never the actual depth.
Correct. Top secret.
Yeah.
Loose lips sink ships.
Exactly.
Gatos could go safely to 300 feet, and Baleos could go to 400 feet.
400. Wow.
But people always ask, how deep can they go? All the way to the bottom.
That is true. That is very true.
Can it still sink? Sure. Any boat can still sink. Can it come back up is the question.
True. Very true.
Cobia went down about 450 feet at the deepest. And I'd heard stories of Baleos going about 600 or so.
Wow.
That's when the hull just starts squeezing in on you. That had to have been terrifying.
And, going back to a couple of my friends, they talked about, and I'm curious if the World War II guys did this. I'm pretty sure they probably did because, sailors are sailors. So the stuff gets handed down for generations.
Yep.
My submariner friend said they liked to, when they were on the surface, they'd tie a string from one side of the bridge to the other, and just have it piano wire tight. And then when they got to the bottom of their dive and they're cruising, and of course this would be modern boats, there's this huge dip in the string just to show how much the ocean pressure compresses that hull.
Yeah.
Have you heard anything like that out of the World War II boats? Of them doing stuff? Same thing.
Yeah. And it's actually demonstrated in the movie Down Periscope.
Yes.
I've never seen that.
Okay. And that was filmed on Pampanito in San Francisco, and she's a Baleo or
yes.
a trench.
Yes.
Trench. How many classes were there in World War II that they were building? Gato, Baleo, and
Tench would have been. They started the Tench class towards the end there.
Okay. And then there were some older boats, like I see numbers for R something, R number and S number. Those
S
were the
and
interwar
R.
period.
Yeah, S and R class. Actually, the poster behind me is the list of all the submarines from Holland all the way up to current ones now. So I don't think Wisconsin's on there yet, though, but um, all the different classes and the dates, and we reference this thing all the time.
Were the R and the S classes kind of like for destroyers? Destroyers, they stopped making them for a while, and then all of a sudden they started up again, and you'd have two to a class. You have a new class, and there's four, and they just had a whole bunch of small amount classes from 1930 to until you get to the Benson Livermore Glees class right in 3940.
Yeah,
Where they started the Fletchers, and they were experimenting a lot. Was that going on with the subs too?
yeah, pretty much. There was a lot smaller numbers, and then you get to the Gato, Baleo, and Tench, and there's dozens. So those
Yeah.
were the main class. I always, from what I learned, like to say that the Gato was like the first class they got right. That's when they started using the engines. They actually started from train engines. So they went from being fleet boats where they were just scoping out ahead of the fleet to actually being useful and going out and on their own and sinking ships. So Gato was the first class they got right. That was actually effective.
Nice.
And from there on, it just got better.
And you said train engines?
Yeah, they're based on engines from trains
Okay.
for
Uh,
1,600 horsepower diesel engines.
any of those engines survived the war after when they started breaking up the subs and used for other stuff?
I'm not sure if they were used when they from the other subs, but I mean, Cobia's. We've restored engines 1 and 2 on Cobia, so we run them a couple times a year, especially for reunions. That's always fun to have the guys come back and they get that fresh whiff of diesel. You'll see the tears start to fall.
There you go. And actually, I think you just answered Lunar's question in the chat, asking a lot of stuff still functional on Cobia. Is that because her condition at retirement was so good versus other survivors?
Yeah. Cobia had very few modifications after the war. Always was in the hands of the Navy. When she left Connecticut, she went to Milwaukee. It was a training boat, and then came from Milwaukee up to here in 1970. So when Cobia came up here, she had nearly a full set of blueprints. There's still hundreds of parts in the original wrapping on the boat.
With the Cosmoline and everything?
Yeah,
Yeah.
manuals and everything. So just really well taken care of her whole life, basically. And the submarine veterans took great care of the sub when they got it here in Manitowoc. And most of the time we've done guided tours, so that also helps with keeping an eye on things.
Deters vandalism.
Yeah.
And tinkering. Yep. Yeah. Very good.
So, yeah, we were fortunate.
Huh. Okay, so Goolay comes back from her first war cruise. She has not really had. I think I saw something where she only saw one target of opportunity worth spending a torpedo on. Which, folks, if you're not aware, torpedoes, they were having a lot of trouble with torpedoes early in World War II, subs and destroyers. And Bureau of Ordnance was not really listening to the guys out in the field in the front lines that were saying they're running too deep or they're running too well. I don't think any of them were running too shallow. I think they were just running too deep.
Too deep because they tested them with water instead of the explosives. So
yeah,
they were a lot heavier with the explosives and ran about 10 feet deeper.
So if you're a captain on a Gato, you've got how many torpedoes? How many fish?
24.
24. So you're going to use those sparingly. And I know from reading C.J. Christ's book, The War in the Gulf of Mexico, he chronicles a lot of the German U-boats. And a lot of times the U-boats in the Gulf of Mexico were sinking ships with gunfire from their deck guns rather than wasting torpedoes because they were so precious. And I can't tell you how many torpedoes a Type 9C U-boat would have. You wouldn't know, would you?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Not off the top of your head. So,
but yeah.
Ryan from USS New Jersey always gets asked if she could ever run under her own power. Karen must get that even more since the engines run. I'm sure you do.
Engines run, but there's no screws on the back, so we're really not going to go anywhere.
Yeah, you're just going to sit in place and churn water, huh?
Yep.
So did they cut her shafts too, or just remove the props?
Just remove the props, and we don't know where they went and when. We never figured that out. That was before she left Connecticut to go to Milwaukee, so never had them. There's also sort of, whether it's rumor or some truth to it, that there's no operational war vessels on the Great Lakes. An old Canada, a treaty with Canada, so that's always the little tale we tell around here, that so we can't have operational guns or screws on there.
It's all Connor's fault.
Pretty much.
It's all Connor's fault.
I'm cool with that.
So torpedoes, you got to use them sparingly. They saw one that was possibly torpedo worthy, but it was moving so fast they couldn't get a bead on it. So
yeah.
They come back, and do I remember correctly, they had a change of command before their second war cruise?
Sure.
Come on, Karen, you're the sub expert. I expect you to know this. Yeah, I think I read somewhere they changed.
29 boats I got to track.
What's that?
I have 29 boats that I have to know things about, so I don't know all the details about all of them. But
that's true. That's true. Fair point.
And the 28 subs are also important to our museum. So
the 28 subs Manitowoc built plus cobia.
Yep. So 29.
29. She starts out on her second war patrol, and nothing further is heard from her.
Yeah.
She's declared late, and turns up. She doesn't turn up at Midway, and that was a question. If she's sorting out of Pearl Harbor, I noticed a lot of the lost subs are overdue at Midway. Was Midway a refueling point before they continued back to Pearl?
Yeah, they could stop there for supplies and things like that if needed. But
what was the standard length of time that one of these boats could stay out to sea?
They averaged about 60 to 75 days.
Okay. And was that determined by fuel, ammo, food, water?
War patrols, if they ran out of fuel, food, or torpedoes. So yeah, it depends on how successful their patrol was. If fuel, they could carry 118,000 gallons of diesel, got about a 1,200 mile range. Midway was helpful though. If you spent your torpedoes early on, only a couple weeks in, you could go there, store, get some more, and then go back out again. So patrol part A, part B kind of thing. So, but yeah, they could refuel, but most of the time, if they did, 60 days, this guy's going to want a break.
Gotcha. Makes sense. So you're confined in a metal tube.
Pretty much.
Lunar is apologizing for asking so many questions. Lunar never apologized for asking questions because that's why Karen and I are employed. So keep on asking questions.
I like questions.
I am going to hold off on this last question though until we get to another part. So stay tuned and stay patient with me, please. Goolay is declared missing. After the war, the Americans go over to Japan, start looking at their military records, and it looks like I'm assuming. How can I phrase this? I'm assuming you would not have two boats in the same patrol area at the same time. Is that a good assumption or a bad assumption?
Bad.
Bad. Okay.
Bad, but they were all different missions. Sometimes they would form like a wolf pack.
Okay.
So the Lardo, for example, was part of a wolf pack in their first patrol. So that was Lardo, Senate, and Haddock, I believe. They got names too. Captain Lardo was the commander for Lagardo, so they called it the Lardo's Lancers. So they could do the single missions, or they could be in the same area. And there's even with the Manitowoc subs, Redfin, possibly one of the R's, they sometimes would accidentally fire upon each other.
Whoops.
So they weren't able to determine. I think there's one of them where they fired under the other boat, and then they just kind of had a feeling like maybe we shouldn't fire again on this one. And the other boat was getting the hell out of there. So after the war, they were talking and go, "Oh crap!"
That was you.
So they did cross paths here and there and different things. Lagardo actually, when she was sunk, Cobia was depth charged by the same boat like 2 weeks later, I believe.
Okay.
That was the Mother's Day depth charging where they lost a 4-inch. So they were in the same area. It was Gulf of Siam, Gulf of Thailand at the time. So Lagardo was sunk. They had met up with USS Bea the night before. Bea got beat up. Lagardo said, "We'll take it from here." They were never heard from again. And then that mine layer depth charge Cobia, and then the other Manitowoc submarine, Hawkbill, actually was given permission to go after that boat. So that was the Hatsutaka. So Hatsutaka sank Lagardo, depth charge Cobia, and then the Hawkbill came around and sank the Hatsutaka.
So was that basically a revenge run? Hey, go take out this mine layer.
Yeah, he actually, Worth Scanlon was the captain of Hawkbill. He actually asked for permission because he was friends with Captain Lada. They said, can we go after them? Because at that point they realized they, hadn't heard from him since. Bea had reported back. And then he got permission. So it's actually in one of the episodes of Victory at Sea, Revenge of the Hawkbill.
Nice.
But we have one of the life rings from the Hatsutaka in our museum.
Wow.
It's in store, but Cobia still has a connection, with the Manitowoc subs too. That's kind of a cool connection with the Manitowoc subs and all of that.
It's nice that y'all were able to get a class like what was being built at the shipyard there.
Yeah, it's identical.
Yeah. So with her being declared lost, they're looking at the records. They're saying, okay, on this date, there's a depth charging of a suspected submarine. Debris comes to the surface. I would assume the process of elimination, any other boats in that patrol area had made it home. Yeah. Therefore, it's Goolay that likely went down on June 14th of 44.
Yeah.
That's how they determine it.
There was debris and oil slicks. So
yeah,
that's how some of them, they were known, Lagardo was known in a certain area, and with Bea there, they had a pretty good idea of what happened to him. But others, this one, they left and no reports after that, which is just eerie.
Yeah. Yeah. And I notice here lately, I guess it kind of kicked off with RV Petrol. And what was Paul's name? The owner, Seattle Seahawks owner. Oof. He was funding the research for deep sea exploration and finding some of these wrecks, like the Indianapolis, and some of the ships around Guadalcanal, visiting these old battle sites. That kind of seemed to kick off a whole exploration phase here in the modern day in the past 10 years or so, where new wrecks, it's not really new, but these wrecks are being rediscovered. And I notice a fair number of submarines have been rediscovered in recent years.
Yeah,
Lardo was rediscovered when?
2005. And Lagardo was kind of the first of that rediscovery. Yeah. We set the bar, apparently, which was it was a struggle, but we learned a lot in that process working with the Navy, and this was the first time to go, what do you want us to do about it? And it cost money to go verify that they wanted proof that it was Lagardo, even though it was in the same area and Lardo had a unique feature only 2 other subs had. Those same subs in the wolf pack of having a 5-inch deck gun on the front and the aft of the sail and the conning tower. So we said, it's in this area. It's got the 2 guns. What more do you need? But they did a joint training exercise and eventually scraped some growth off the propellers, the screws, and found Manitowoc SB Company. So then that verified them. But since then, there's been more than a dozen. There were 4 Manitowoc subs that were lost. 2 of them have been found, Lardo and Robolo. Robolo, I believe, was in 2019, right around there. Most recent that I've heard of was the USS Harder. So
that was recent too. That was only a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and for folks out there who haven't followed along with shipwreck stories or anything, this is one of the best cases of a real life mystery that you can ever run into, because how do you tell 2 subs or 2 ships apart that were built to the same exact design if you can't find hull numbers? If she's in an area where there's a lot of marine growth and that paint comes off, how do you tell? And like Karen was just saying, it was the propellers that helped you identify Lagarto.
Yeah.
And then there was something with 2 guns instead of just 1. When USS Johnston was found a couple of years ago, 2 Fletchers in the same battle went down. Is it Johnston? Is it Hull? And our now director, Park Stevenson, he was on the research team that had found the Johnston, and he's communicating with me. And what it all came down to, identifying the Johnston as being the Johnston versus being the Hull, was a particularly shaped support that kind of comes out at a 45 and then flattens out underneath gun number 4. And we identified that with KID, and then using that along with first person accounts that particular gun had lost its barrel on Hull, and yet on this one you can see the handling room is the gun is flipped upside down and the handling room is sticking up. So you can see that weirdly shaped support structure, but you can also see the gun barrel poking out from the silt, from the sand at the bottom, ocean bottom. It still had the gun barrel, so that had to be Johnston. That was kind of the until they found the actual hull with the hull numbers on it. The debris field several hundred meters closer to the surface, further up. That's what really sealed the deal that it's Johnston, until they found the hull and verified it with the hull numbers.
Yeah.
It's a mystery. It's always I had fun with that. If you can have fun trying to identify a shipwreck where hundreds of people died, you know, I enjoyed the mystery of it and really testing my knowledge of the ship. So I understand what you guys were going through with Lagarto. That's really neat.
We were trying to compare it to Kobe at the time, and at that time I wasn't even full time yet. I was part time, just out of college, and everything we found was interior hull, the numbers stamped in different places, not a whole lot on the exterior. But if you got an inch that says 245 or 371, that's going to be impossible to see after 60 years underwater, 70 years. So we did a lot of research on how to identify them, make sure it's correct, and it worked though. But that was a lot of fun. And as you can see in that photo, there's no hull numbers, which is Kobe doesn't have it either, because during the war most of them didn't have hull numbers painted on the sail or even the front. It's part of the camouflage scheme.
So when you go see a museum sub now and you see the number on it, that's a post-war affectation. Okay.
That's a big debate on whether or not we should put the hull numbers back on cobia. We've been debating that forever, but back in '96, when you go back to Russell Booth, he chose mid 45 as the era that we were gonna aim for restoration period. And mid 45, cobia didn't have hull numbers.
Okay.
you say a lot of the other ones do, and that's kind of an identifying feature. We still have the weld marks on the sail of where the numbers were. So back and forth of, do we want to stick to the time period? Do we want to have numbers on? So back and forth on how we want to do that.
And that's always a big debate. And you pick a time period that you're aiming for and you try to stick with it. And so there's a lot of folks that are like, but it looks cool for this or that. And that's a debate that we've been having with Kid about for years. I've been having that argument about, oh, you should paint her in dazzle camouflage and everything. It's like, but she didn't have dazzle camouflage at the end of the war, which is our target date, August of 45. And so I finally had to choose a hill to die on, and I chose not to die. We're going to do dazzle camouflage coming out of dry dock because she had it in 1944. And it's going to be basically like a temporary exhibit is the way we're going to treat it. It's going to be an educational thing. We're going to do the dazzle for 5 years, and we'll be able to compare and contrast the measure 22 that she had that hides the ship against the horizon and against the ocean in 45 versus the dazzle, which makes her stand out like a sore freaking neon thumb out at sea. But it confuses the gunnery because you don't know if she's going left or going right, or if she's moving toward you or moving away from you. So we'll be able to talk about that and educate about that, because people walk up now and they're like, how come you don't have her in camouflage? She is in camouflage. This is her camouflage. A lot of people don't seem to think that there was any camouflage other than what they see Army or Marine Corps guys wearing with the modeled stuff and the dazzle from World War I.
We get the question of,
then after we have to repaint, we're going to go back to 43 with the all blue that Texas has got now. And we'll have that for 5 years, and then we rotate back to measure 22, and we're back in 45 where we should be. So it'll be a nice educational opportunity.
That sounds fair.
And then I'll retire and I don't have to have the argument anymore. Let's see. How would a Gato not accidentally be shot at by friendly forces with no external numbers?
That
was a good reaction. I like that. Obviously, well, we heard you told the story about how they would shoot at each other and later compare.
And that was also when they were underwater, though. So they couldn't even have the visual of seeing another sub. It's also a funny story with Cobia, but they had, I never remember the actual name of it. The nickname is the Gertrude. Is a cylinder that sits on the bow, and that was the way of doing the IFF, the identify friend or foe.
Okay.
So that was with other submarines and I think aircraft as well. So there was sort of a way of signaling each other to see if you're American or not.
Funny, it didn't always work if it's like the IFF that the ships had.
Yeah. I don't know a whole lot of details about that on the submarines, but I know they had that. Cobia had an issue with that. They happened to be in the right area at the right time when a plane went down, and they planned it so they all bailed out, and there were seven airmen in the water. And Cobia saw this happen through the periscope, so they popped up and realized it was American pilots. So they went to go bring them on board. As you know, George H.W. Bush was rescued by the Finback. So the pilot was not convinced that this was an American submarine, and he was hiding under his raft with a knife in hand. And apparently it was some sort of baseball trivia that convinced him that this was an American sub.
Who won the American division in 1938. Yeah.
Yep.
I've heard about stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, you hide from the enemy, but then again, friend or foe.
See, in a shooting war now, Wikipedia would be our enemy because you could just look that up real quick on your phone.
That's true.
Yeah. Let's catch up a little bit. Paul Allen. Thank you, Eric. Paul Allen was the owner of the Seahawks and funded the RV Petrol and the shipwreck hunt. Eric's also asking about the kids' dazzle paint. Will she have large hull numbers or small ones? All hull numbers in World War II were small. The big, huge honking hull numbers that you see like on the Iowa class right now, and the modern ships, that's a post-war development and not something you would see on a World War II ship. So we will have the small numbers. Good question. So circling back around to Goolay, Goolay goes down. They look at the war records. They figure out June 14th is probably when they went down.
Mm-hmm.
To date, she has not been found, correct?
Correct.
So
yeah, Goolay and Keat out of the Manitowoc subs have not been located.
Okay.
I believe.
So the war ends, and the submarine vets count up. There's 52 boats. They assign one to each state. Louisiana gets assigned the Goolay because of that obvious connection. And a monument made out of rose-colored granite or rose-colored marble, I forget which it is, was created and put down at Algiers, Louisiana, just across the river from New Orleans, on the naval base there, the Naval Support Activity Center, New Orleans, located at Algiers Point, where the Mississippi River curves around right as you pass downtown New Orleans, in Gilmore Park Naval Housing Area. And it consisted of a torpedo, which you can see here in this picture, and the monument there that went with it, dedicating it to the sailors lost on the Goolay. And it stayed there up until, I'm looking at my cheat sheet, folks. I am not versed on submarines. Huh?
No.
Oh, you're laughing at cheat sheet? Yeah. I want to say 2006 is when the base closed there. There was a whole series of base closures in the late 90s, early 2000s. And that base got closed and shut down. And the torpedo and the monument were picked up and moved somewhere into storage because the housing area became civilian. And I guess, this was Navy property at that point. If you're going to erect something on a base, it's going to become the base's property. The subvets went looking for it after somebody realized that the base was closed. Hey, what happened to the Memorial? They drive over and it's gone. And the gentleman in green, kneeling down right next to the forklift, Dennis Robbins, I believe his last name was Robbins, found it and basically repatriated it for subvet so they could set it up again at a different location that it would not be moved or lost again. Little point of curiosity: Dennis and a group from the chapter that put this together came to Baton Rouge mid 2000s after they had repatriated this and offered it to the kid. And unfortunately, the timing was not good, and we were unable to take it, which I always thought was a shame. But I wasn't at that point in time. I wasn't privy to all the logistics that went on for running the museum. So it ends up not being put back up, and instead, around 2013, a new memorial comes. Well, I'm jumping ahead. It's gone for now. Meantime, in Shreveport, the American Legion post has a torpedo at their post, and they have set up a memorial. And they talk about the fact that the people of Shreveport funded the construction of this sub. So this is kind of their sub. They're located at a little point, almost a peninsula, out on one of the lakes outside of Shreveport. And they've called it Submarine Point. Nice. And they put this memorial up on Submarine Point, nice little shaded area. I've not been there yet. That's going to be on my bucket list next time I drive north. And they also have a memorial, I'm assuming it's inside the post itself, for a local boy who was killed on one of the 52 subs. and another Shreveport native by the name of Beckham, who died on the Golet. And so you had a Louisiana boy on the Louisiana sub that went down. So this one is still in existence up in Shreveport. And then in 2013, down in Metairie, which is kind of a sister city, a suburb area of New Orleans, on Veterans Boulevard. Veterans Boulevard is huge. I want to say at certain points it's 4 lanes in each direction, huge median in the middle, and they've set up a kind of multiple veterans memorials in the medians. And so the Golet Memorial was redone. Looks like a different. Let's see. Let's go back for a second. It may be the same torpedo. It might be. It looks kind of. This looks smaller.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It might be. Nose is different. I know that much. But a torpedo, which seems to be. Have you seen any of the other memorials around the country? Is a torpedo kind of the normal thing?
Yeah. Seen a handful, at least in photos, but torpedo's pretty common.
The one from Mississippi that's in Ocean Springs down on the coast is a torpedo like this. So that's why I was curious if it's a common thing. The plaque was recast. You notice it's and I sat and looked at this and compared them. It's the same wording, same exact wording, but this is not the rose-colored granite. And what I wondered what had happened to it, because seeing it in person, it was gorgeous. And that's the only instance of rose-colored granite I've ever seen for a memorial. I'm sure there's others out there. I just haven't run across it myself. But let's see. Enjoyed what phones dying. Okay. Hank is signing off. Nice to see you, Hank. Hope all is well. So they recast this. They remade this thing with the same thing, and I wondered what had ever happened to the original. And the young man that died from Shreveport on the Golet, there was a newspaper article talking about someone who had found a small quote unquote plaque at an estate sale, and it was made out as a memorial to the USS Goolay, which was built in Shreveport. And so this guy donated it to a group in Shreveport, and they were trying to have it during the whole Confederate monuments debate and everything. There's a Confederate monument in Shreveport that was being suggested, take this down, and instead let's put this display up for the Goolay instead in its place. And so I was researching a little more, trying to find what happened with that. Did the memorial go up? Did it not? And lo and behold, I ran across an article talking about a rusty colored plaque, and it was bought at the estate sale of Dennis Robbins. And I'm like, that's the rose. Wow. It's rusty. It's rose. It's the color of the stone. It's not rusted. It's not metal. So I still don't have an answer. I don't think they came to a solution about the Confederate monument versus the World War II submarine memorial. But that memorial apparently is somewhere up in private hands in Shreveport, waiting to be put up somewhere. So maybe it'll make its way to the American Legion Post. Maybe it'll make it to City Hall. Who knows? But there's other locations. In fact, you told me that, and I remember seeing it when I was in Manitowoc. You've got something similar at the riverside alongside Cobia. As you're walking along looking at Cobia, there's various memorials to the different subs, and Goolay has one up there as well.
Yep. Yeah, on the Riverwalk that's next to the sub, and then facing the sub on the railing, there's 28 plaques, one for each submarine that was built here, with a short little story and then the name of all the plank owners. So Goolay is definitely one of them there.
And I screwed up and did not take a picture of that when I was up there in 2019. And that means I just have to come back and visit you and Cobia and terrorize you for a couple of days and complain about cheese.
Yes. You're the Cheese is good. Cheese curds are the best.
Now, when that's all that's on the menu, that gets old really fast from a Southern boy standpoint. Digging around on the net, getting ready for this broadcast, lo and behold, what did I find? There's another memorial for Goolay down in, let me get the name of it right. I didn't write the name down. Liberty Park in San Diego, of all places.
Huh.
And I don't know why it's there, but it's there. And between the riverfront, or not the riverfront, but the bayfront and the main street close by, all down this double sidewalk, they've got different memorials to different things. And for whatever reason, Goolay is included in that number. So she's remembered now in 2 places in Louisiana, Wisconsin, San Diego, and our good friend Sarah Bellion. Thank you, Sarah. Sent me this picture of a memorial that's out at the USS Bowfin. I forget the official name of the museum. Karen, help me. The Pacific something. Just Google USS Bowfin, folks. You'll find the museum. But they have all 52 subs that were lost in a big circle around a flagpole. And she sent me this additional one. Apparently, over on the submarine base in Pearl Harbor, they have a similar memorial, plaques for each of the 52 lost subs. And I'm assuming this might be Pearl Harbor Day, or maybe there's a National Submarine Day, right?
Yeah, submarine birthday, April 12th.
Yeah, so maybe this is the April 12th date where they're putting the Hawaiian leis on each of the plaques in memorial. So Goolay is remembered in many places. Surprisingly, I until I started working at the Kit and just stumbled across it, I had never even heard of it. So this is really good. The 52 boats are all remembered. Their crews are remembered and honored. So they're not slipping out of memory. Yeah. And that brings us to Wisconsin's boat, the Lardo. You want to talk a little bit about y'all's memorial?
Yeah, we don't have the torpedo, but the Wisconsin chapter, or the Manitowoc chapter of the World War II submarine veterans, were the ones in charge of memorializing Lardo, and for many years chose to do a memorial service, similar to the tolling the boat service, where in tolling the boats you ring the bell for every sub that was lost, both during, before, and after the war. So we do that with the crew of Lardo. Lardo had 86 crewmen on board when she was lost. So we have continued that tradition. They sort of handed that over right before the sub was found, actually. I kind of worked with them in 2005. And that was, we usually do it the first weekend or first Saturday in May, because Lardo went down on May 3rd. It was lost on May 3rd. And the sub was discovered mid-May sometime. Don't know the exact date, but almost 60 years to the date, the wreck of Lardo was discovered. So at that point, submarine veterans were getting, like all the other World War II vets, getting older. And that group disbanded, and they sort of asked the museum to keep on doing that for them. So even if it's a tiny little ceremony, every year we do the Lardo ceremony and toll the bell on Cobia for Lardo. But also Lardo has a plaque with the other 28. And we also, 2006 is when we had the big reunion. We had representatives from 19 or 20 different crew members from the Lardo. We had like 200 people here. Somebody had a plaque made of the crew that was lost with the sub. So that is now across from Cobia. It's on the wall along the river walk. It's a wall of the museum. So there's the separate, there's the plank owner's plaque, and then there's the lost crew plaque. What you see on the screen there is from a temporary exhibit that we kept the panels and kept it for more of a permanent exhibit. It's across from our exhibit on the 28 subs that were built here. That how the wreck was lost. It was lost on the second patrol from a depth charging. And then finding the families. It took us 12 years, but we were able to make contact with one person that was close to the 86 crewmen. So that was pretty neat. We've met a lot of them over the years. Yeah, and the Navy got involved that summer of 2006 and confirmed that it was indeed Lardo. So we have that, and then on the other side of that wall is a little theater. In 2009, I believe it was finished. When you hear 23 years, everything kind of blends together at specific dates. So 2009, I believe, is when the documentary Lost and Found, the legacy of USS Lardo. It's on PBS now from time to time. We sell it in the gift shop, but it won 3 Emmys. So that was pretty cool.
Nice.
So, like the 9-minute preview that they had put together before they finished it, and that's on the other side of this wall that plays. So it recently was listening to it quite a bit because we were updating the exhibit that's right across from there the last couple of weeks. So it's really fascinating story and all the different connections. Right around the corner, there's a panel. Captain Latta loved Harleys, loved his Harley, 1936 Indian, I believe.
Wow.
And he took it apart. He would store it on the boat when they went out to sea. And there's even record of him doing this when he was on the Narwhal before that. And then when he got back to port, put it together and ride off down the pier. So there's still a Wisconsin-built Harley on a Wisconsin-built boat in the Gulf of Thailand. So
nice.
Share all those stories, and there's always something interesting that comes out of that. It's been a fascinating story and a privilege to work on and meet the families and learn all these stories.
That Harley connection is interesting because one day, it's a war grave, so people shouldn't be disturbing it or anything. But at some point, it's possible that the sub, the structure of the sub may start disintegrating. They're seeing that with the Arizona now. And somebody going down to check on the wreck and finding maybe the deck is opened up or something, and there's a Harley Davidson motorcycle sitting in there. That would just blow people away, not knowing about it. It makes me think of the History Channel back in the early 2000s, the deep sea detective. Somebody went down diving off the coast of New Jersey, I want to say, or Virginia, and they found 2 steam locomotives sitting upright at the bottom of the ocean, just a few feet apart, 15, 20, 30 feet apart. And they're like, how did these get down here? And the 2 guys that were part of the deep sea detectives came down. It was again, mystery. How did this get here? Look at the locomotives and work backwards from that. And
we actually
I can see a deep sea detective episode on a Harley Davidson in a submarine.
They were actually they dove on the Garda. We hired them to
really?
Documentary. Yeah. So they are in the documentary, Richie and John.
Fabulous.
Richie was here in 2007 or 8 for the ceremony. So that was really cool. And in fact, the color scheme of those panels is based off of Harley because there was a local guy that has the same type of Harley. So he would loan it to us a few times. We actually put it on the sub for the ceremony. But
on Cobia.
Yeah, on Cobia.
How did you get it on there?
And manhandle it down the gangway and get it on the sub. So when we fired up Cobia's engines at the end of the ceremony, he would fire up his Harley on the deck. And sometimes we would have a group of Harley riders on the Riverwalk, and then it was just that rumbling sound.
It was mayhem.
So when these panels were put together, the Harley was actually on display between them. So they were on each side, and the Harley was in the middle. And our maintenance guy is pretty good with craftsmanship, and he built like a jagged section that looked like it was the deck of the sub with the Harley on there. So that's why it's the sort of the Harley colors there with the black and the orange.
That's a neat connection. That's neat.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that is about all that we have on the Goolay. So, folks, I hope this was educational for you and entertaining, and maybe, just maybe, we'll get a little more information. Maybe we can do a follow-up in the future if some of these deep sea expeditions maybe come across come across the Goolay. One would hope.
Amazing.
But in the meantime, before we wrap things up, what would it be like to walk aboard the Goolay if she were still around? How can you learn more about her? And the best way to learn more about her is through her 6 surviving sisters of the Gato-class. And I understand she's kind of a hybrid of the Gatos and the Baleos, but we decided to let you know where you can find them. The first one is USS Cavala in Galveston, Texas. Karen, for each one of these, shout out if you've been aboard them.
Yes.
Cavala, yeah.
Yep.
I've been aboard Cavala. She is the only one that is dry berthed. She's sitting on Seawolf Island, right across from Galveston Island. There's a destroyer escort right next to her, keeping her in line, making sure she doesn't get too rowdy. Have you been on this one?
Might have.
USS Cobia, Karen's baby, up in Manitowoc. And I've been on her as recent as 2019. And I got to tell you, Karen does a great job. Her whole crew does a great job with her. In fact, I don't know if I've told you this or not, but your presentation at the symposium about dehumidification for the boat actually sparked an idea, because I can't do what you did on the boat because the ship is designed differently, the kids designed differently. But I was able to kind of modify your idea to our design, and we got a dehumidification system running through there, and it solved a lot of our problems.
Great.
Once we get back from the shipyard, part of the problem for me was the reefer deck sweating constantly with cold northern Mississippi River water coming down to 70-degree springtime temperatures, and we sweated like a Coke can coming out of the refrigerator. And that same sweat for all those years, and it being the reefer, the deterioration of that deck where the pumping equipment is, the refrigerator pumps, looks like Swiss cheese. And so they're going to replace all that while they're in the shipyard. And once she comes back with that brand new deck, that dehumidification system should keep that from recurring for the people that take over from us, our next generation, taking care of these ships. So you guys inspired me to be able to keep that from happening for those folks that take over. So thank you for that.
That's great.
Oh
no.
Cod is up in Cleveland, Ohio. And have you been aboard her?
Yep.
I have yet to be aboard her. I need to go because right around the corner from her is the historic plaque for Admiral Kidd, because he was a Cleveland native. Our good friends Evan and Paul Ferrace are in charge of her, and Paul's going to probably raise hell that I've said I've never been on there, but he needs to host a HENSA conference so I can get up there. But by all reports, weigh in if I'm incorrect, she's another example just of an immaculate boat.
Yeah. That they call it the Martha Stewart boat.
Martha Stewart boat. Why is that?
It's got all kinds of props. He's recovered a lot of artifacts from thrift stores and things like that. So, I mean, the boat looks like the crew just stepped off yesterday. So it's a really great presentation of the sub.
Well, and that's what we aim for on Kidd, is to the crew could walk back on board at any moment. So yeah. I'm glad to hear that Cod's in that great a shape. I would say the same, honestly, about you guys. You guys had stuff like jackets and shirts hanging up and everything as if somebody was living there. So yeah, I really enjoyed that presentation.
We are a little bit limited because we have an overnight program that's very popular. So we got to make sure it's stuff that we can easily hide from the kids and the adults.
I understand that. That's why we don't have sheets on our bunks or anything, because of the overnight program. Yeah. Otherwise, we'd be doing laundry all day long, all week long. Our good friend Shane Stevenson up in Buffalo has the USS Croker. You can see the Little Rock in the background, and just outboard is, Little Rock just outboard, and the Sullivans in the background, kid's sister ship.
So
I got to go up there for the first time in September. Have you ever been able to go aboard?
I have. Yep.
Yeah.
Been to quite a few of them. But yeah, I was on that one. And fun fact,
Yeah.
Cabala's hull number is 244, Cobia's is 245, and Croker's 246. 3 of them in line are all museum ships.
Wow. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
So sometimes you'll see little parts on the sub that are stamped 244 or 246 because they were being built at the same time, but same torpedo tube ring, just grab that one.
Okay. So say something from Croker is actually on Cobia instead because okay. Interesting.
Yeah, same part, but they got stamped 246 instead, and they grabbed that one. So it's kind of
see, if that was Todd, Paul would be hitting you up saying, "I want that back."
No, we have Todd's anchor.
Do you? Oh wow.
Yes, he doesn't acknowledge that, but the anchor is stamped COD. So that's our joke. You can't.
You sure it's COD and not just cash on delivery?
No.
Okay. All right. Hello, All American Travels. How are you? Thanks for joining us tonight. This is a close neighbor for me, USS Drum over in Mobile, Alabama. I first saw Drum back in '96, and Hurricane Katrina banged her up a little bit in 2005, and then the Battleship Commission chose to pull her up on shore and have her kind of in a different sort of dry berth, more similar to like a cradle like Kidd has than what Cavallo has in Galveston, with her sitting in the earth. And then I think you were with me in 21 when the HINSA symposium was there.
Not in 21. I was there when it was there before that. That was my first HINSA conference, was in Mobile.
Okay. Early 20, or probably 2008, 2009, something like that.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah, I didn't get to go to that
one. Yeah, that was my first conference. So yes, I got on Drum too.
Well, I can tell you there's a huge difference in Drum between '96 and today. They had a volunteer, or have a volunteer, that came along, and he didn't care anything about, the battleship was not his passion. None of the armor on shore, none of the aircraft in the hangar was his passion. The submarine was his passion. Mm-hmm. And he knew a lot about subs, and he was able to stir up some passion in some other folks and then some corporations that would donate money or equipment. And the difference has been phenomenal. Drum just looks great these days.
Done amazing work.
Yeah. Let's see. And this is one that's still on my bucket list, COD and Silversides. I have not been on Silversides. What can you tell me about Silversides? Because I know you and Trent talked quite a bit online.
Yeah, he was just here a couple months ago for the Lardo ceremony, actually, in May. But they also have running engines. Silversides is great. I got some flack the first time we were in the HINSA conference in Pearl Harbor, 2011, that I had been to Bowfin before I got to Silversides. My defense, Lake Michigan's in the middle, and that's a big lake. So
that didn't buy you much credit, did it?
Yeah. No. Got some flack at that conference, but there was a group of us. Actually, we rented a van and we got free passage on the car ferry across the Badger, and we went and visited Silversides and the Milwaukee Clipper and the LST that's also in Muskegon. So
393, I think.
Yes, I remember. But Silversides is also in great condition, and they have a newer museum. They also have a bell from the USS Redfin, which was one of the Manitowoc subs. Oh. So we want that back.
Want that back?
You got to find the fun things to give each other a hard time.
if it goes missing, they know where to look, huh?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It must have been Paul at COD.
Now, All American Travels made a comment, and I have to agree with that. Been on Drum, been on Cavala. For sisters, they're vastly different. And I would assume that is for the same reason that you'll see a huge difference between Kidd and Sullivan's and Cass and Young. Sullivan's and Cass and Young look a lot more similar than Kidd does to either one of them. And that's just because of what happened to them during the post-war Cold War period, changes in technology and configuration. Would that be accurate?
Yeah. In fact, out of all of them I've been on, the most closely related sub would be Cod. It was eerily similar in many aspects. I mean, there's still differences, but there's a few other areas like Cod, for example. They don't have stairs going in and out. They use the original ladders.
They have the vertical ladders?
Yeah.
Oh, yep. Wow.
They don't have any modification from that. So when we were there, I was taking a picture of their head because, you got to compare. And as I backed up, I automatically ducked because on Cobia, there's stairs there, but not on Cod. But it was so similar in certain areas that it was just habit. So,
right.
But yeah, it varies of, what they were at Croker and Cavala, I believe, both changed quite a bit after the war. Wachovia is still that original World War II look.
Okay, very nice. So essentially, Cod is Cod the only one that is relatively close to her World War II configuration out of all the boats out there?
I think Drum is pretty close, and Pampanito yet.
Pampanito's on my bucket list. I still have not hit any of the ships in California. I don't. Ansa is in San Diego this year. I'm going to be able to get to San Diego. So California seems to be cursed for me. I just don't get to get out there. Lunar Weasel, thank you for joining us, and tune back in and see just the last few minutes if you're so inclined. But thank you for supporting the channel. We appreciate it. So 6 Gatos, and by my count, if I'm remembering correctly, you've hit all 6 of those?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So some of the Baleos you haven't hit.
Trying to think. I think I did all the Baleos too, because I did Ling. I saw lionfish. I saw Ling when it was still a museum at the time. Lionfish I've been on, and trying to think Clamagore, but she's no longer around either.
She's gone. Pampanito is
Batfish out in Oklahoma,
and she's closed down right now too. They're hoping to reopen her, but the 2020 or 2020 floods really did a number, picked her up, swung her around. She floated, but but kind of like Cavala after one of the big hurricanes in the mid 2000s. She got picked up out of her dry berth and moved in a different configuration and sat down. So I'm not sure if that caused any damage, or I read that they want to move her to a higher location. So how the fundraising for that is going, I don't know, but yeah, they're not open yet. So best of luck for them. So you've hit all the Baleos, all the Gatos. What is the one in Baltimore? Torsk. Is she a 10?
Torsk. Yep.
She's a 10. Okay.
I don't remember the class, all of them, but yeah, I've been on Torsk.
Okay.
There's
one up in Portland and one up in there's one in Oregon and one in Maine, Albacore, and
I haven't hit Albacore, but I did get Blueback in
Blueback. That's the one. Okay.
And I actually got a tour because I had my Subfest shirt on with the submarines listed on the back, and the tour guide actually served on one of them.
Nice.
So he snuck me on his tour. So I sent him a shirt in return for his thanks.
And then there's a little experimental sub in Omaha, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that one I haven't been on either.
Yeah. And she routinely seems to have gotten wet. I don't think the water has gotten high enough to lift her or anything, but she's gotten wet every time the Missouri River seems to flood.
Mhm.
So I think they're working on that problem too, similar to batfish.
Yep.
But they haven't had the same problems that batfish had.
No, we're forgetting some. Raekwon
Yeah,
in
Raekwon's
Pittsburgh.
in Pittsburgh.
Greg's gonna yell at us if I don't blanking on the name.
Becky Bakuna.
Bakuna, thank you.
Becky plays with Kid quite a bit on social media. They're both
Nice.
Tolkien fans apparently, and there is a guy that follows our social media that just when Becky chimes in a post that Kid has made, he seems to have, I forget his name off the top of my head, but he seems to just have it out for Becky. He likes picking on Becky, and Becky gives it right back to him. So it's fun whenever the two of them start commenting on our posts.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I've been to both of those. Growlers out in New York.
Yeah. Yeah. I did not get to see Growler or Intrepid when I was in New York a couple of years ago. I was when I did my visits to Cass and Young and to Sullivan's this past fall. I saw lionfish, but they're in the middle of a major restoration for her, and so all you could do was look from the battleship at the work being done. So, but it looks like it's good work being done. So I was happy to see that, even though I was disappointed I didn't get to go on her. Yeah,
yeah. We did sort of some friends and I did an East Coast trip back in like 2005 and saw quite a few of them.
Okay.
So that was fun.
And you've been to Bowfin, obviously, because you got written about it. Yeah.
And the U-505, the German one in Chicago.
I enjoyed seeing her, but I did not realize the setup that was there, because you can walk around her and see everything, and it's a great setup for telling her story. The wrap around coming down to the lower level and all the exhibits on the lower level. But to go inside of her, it's a special tour. And it's only run a couple of times a day, and I did not know that. And the timing of my visit, I was too late for the first one, and I was running out of time by the time the second one was going to go off. So I did not get to go inside. So I've got to go back to Chicago and see U-505. I'm assuming you've taken that. You've gone inside.
Twice. When I was there. There's a picture over there. The AAM conference was there several years ago. So we had like VIP kind of tour, after hours tour. So that was nice. That was nice because I could spend more time looking at things, because the tour itself is pretty quick. It's timed and everything. So
have they modified her for public access?
Yeah, you could there's opening cut in the side of the hull to get into in and out of the sub.
Right. So, but is it wheelchair accessible? Can you roll through from one end to the other?
No.
No? Okay. So you still have to go through all the watertight compartments.
Yeah.
Okay. Do they let you go up onto the deck? The exterior? No? Okay. So you're just going, it's an interior tour.
Yep.
Okay. Sorry, folks, we got off of the Gatos and onto other submarines, but know thine enemy, right? So, Karen, anything that you want to add for the Gatos, for anything going on at the museum that you want to promote while you're here?
Speaking of subs, we're about 20 days out or so from Subfest.
Okay, that's always a big deal for y'all, right?
Yeah. First one was in 2015. So it would be 10 years if we didn't, take a break for 2020. But it was originally like a 3-day festival. After 2020, we joined the city because it was a second weekend in July. So now we match the city with their 4th of July events, the 4th on the shore. And we do Subfest and 4th on the shore on July 4th every year. So it's just a way of celebrating the 28 Manitowoc subs. So any sub vet, anyone in the area is welcome to visit. Sub vets are on the boat. You can talk to them. They love telling their stories. We have a few programs geared around submarines and the veterans, and they can hang out and talk. We have live music. There's food trucks, all kinds of things. $5 admission to the museum, discounted. So it's a pretty big deal. And this year we're going back to being a couple other days with a partner. There's a Submariners pub just up the road from us, so they're going to have music and things too. So it's a pretty big weekend. It's our biggest fundraiser every year, but Subfest is a blast.
Excellent. And those fundraisers are very important because I'd say 99.99% of us museum ships are not government funded. We're nonprofits. So every ticket sale, every souvenir, and every special event counts to keep these ships alive.
Yeah.
I served for a little bit on our state museum association, not the government state, but all the museums in the state of Louisiana. And I learned a lot about museums and how they're funded and everything. AAM put out a great survey a few years ago. Folks watching, if you have never heard this before, if you took every museum of every type in the United States, children's museums, art museums, science museums, historic ships, et cetera, and you put all of their attendance together, we have more people attend us than all Major League Hockey, baseball, basketball, and football teams combined.
Wow.
And those guys get government funding for their stadiums, and we don't. So every museum, every dollar of government funding that museums receive, they put $5 back into the local economy. And that's 2012 numbers. So it's changed a little bit, I'm sure, at post-pandemic, but museums are an index for how healthy your community is. That's one of the things. Is it Bloomberg does the ratings for cities, the worst city, the best city, and museums? Yes, Josh, actually museums actually teach. We are basically a supplement to the schools. So we're a tool that the schools can use. And that's why a lot of us are getting into YouTube now, because the classrooms have become more digitized. So, any sort of support you can throw toward museums, we encourage you to do that. So everybody in the Wisconsin area, heck, even Michigan, Minnesota, go Illinois, go up to Manitowoc and support Cobia. And as far as Kid is concerned, our star attraction is in the shipyard right now, but we're kicking out a new temporary exhibit every month for the year that Kid is going to be gone. Our curator is already about to end up bald like me from pulling his hair out, trying to figure out what can I do next month. But we're going to do it. And so the museum is still open, and it's reduced admission. It's $5 per person, regardless of age. We know our star attraction is gone, and that's really what you come to see, but there's some interesting stuff in that museum if you stop and read it. So I encourage you, come see the Kid museum. Come see the museum, see the airplanes, see all the stuff inside, the artifacts and the exhibits on the veterans. You won't be disappointed, and the money is going toward a good service, because the more money that you put into our museum, the more we're going to be able to do with dry docking. We have a want list, we have a need list. The need list, I feel really good we're going to accomplish the need list, but there's some want lists that we want to accomplish for the next generation, because Karen and I inherited these ships from other people. Somebody's going to inherit them from us, and I'd rather not kick the can down the road as far as maintenance. If I can accomplish it now, with y'all's help, we want to do that, so that somebody else doesn't go, what's that NesSmith guy thinking? He had her in the shipyard. Why didn't he do it back then? So to that end, if you want to support the Wisconsin Maritime Museum, you can find them at this web address. They've got a great website. I surfed it a fair bit the past couple of days getting ready for this. And if you want to support them, if you want to support them, go to the website. But you can also support them by subscribing, liking, and sharing their YouTube channel. Karen, are you guys monetized yet?
No.
No? Yeah. So Run their hours up, guys. Go, put it on. You have a repeat function on YouTube. You can run their videos over and over and over. Before I think I've gotten 24 hours before YouTube got wise and said, "Oh wait, that's the same ISP. Shut him down." So yeah, go see them. And if you want to see the kid, learn more about the kid, go to USSKid.com. Slam on that donate button. Our new social media manager, destroy that donate button, is what she's doing. Also subscribe, and our YouTube channel, which you should be on watching right now. You can subscribe there, and to donate, just go to support our mission on our website, and you'll see a donate button right there. Karen, thank you so very much for being with us tonight. And I'm trying to make this go away now. There we go. And let's see. We got a few last comments. Any questions, folks? Now or never. We're getting ready to leave. Good to know we have our priorities straight. We try, Eric. Josh wants to learn about his grandfather. Come on down. We'll if we know anything about him, we'll tell you. All American Travels, thanks for coming to see us. Eric comes and sees us. Eric, are you the one that put up the money for us taking and dousing Ryan Samansky on the Slater for our high seas history? I think that is him. See if he'll answer. Josh, thank you very much for tuning in. This history lesson comes about so that people like you can see it. So you have a great weekend too. I'm not seeing anything on Eric yet. Yes, that's me. All right. You want to douse Karen for a high seas history? Put up some money for Kobe and for Kid, and we'll meet up somewhere and we'll throw buckets of water at her. But we'll try to make sure we don't throw an actual bucket at you, Karen. I don't know if you saw that video or not, but Ryan's own people threw a bucket at him.
Rude. Can it be in the summer months at least, not January?
Well, we could do it at a HENSA conference somewhere. That's what we did last time. So.
I'm game. For the right amount, I'm game.
There you go. Eric, Josh, all American Travels, it's back on you guys. Who wants to throw water at Karen? She'll come up with something. Hit me up and we'll make it happen. There you go, man. I like that. All right. On behalf of Karen Duvalle and the Wisconsin Maritime Museum, USS Cobia, and the USS Kid, I'm Tim NesSmith. Thank you for tuning in to this Kid Keynotes, and we'll see you at the next session.
Thanks.